Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. Introduction. Everything I Know About Love is Dolly Alderton's candid memoir about growing up, friendship, love, and the messy reality of your 20s. Published in 2018, this book became a phenomenon because it speaks honestly about experiences many women share but rarely see reflected in literature. The intensity of female friendship, the disappointment of dating, the anxiety of finding yourself, and the slow, painful process of growing up. Alderton, a British journalist and podcaster, structures her memoir as a collection of personal essays interwoven with diary entries from her teenage years, lists, emails, and text messages. The result is both deeply personal and universally relatable. At its heart, this is a love letter to her best friend, Farley, and an exploration of how platonic love shapes us just as profoundly as romantic love. Part 1. Growing Up and Finding Friendship. The Foundation of Female Friendship. The book opens with Alderton's childhood and teenage years in London, where she meets Farley, who will become her best friend and the central relationship of her life. Their friendship begins in their early teens and quickly becomes all-consuming in the way only adolescent friendships can be. They spend every moment together, creating their own world of inside jokes, shared obsessions, and fierce loyalty. Alderton captures the intoxicating intensity of this bond. She describes how she and Farley would stay up all night talking, how they developed their own language, and how they navigated the confusing landscape of adolescence together. This wasn't just friendship. It was a partnership, a first love, a creative collaboration, and a refuge from the world. What makes Alderton's portrayal so powerful is her honesty about the dependency and occasional toxicity that can exist even in the most loving friendships. She doesn't romanticize their relationship, but shows it in all its complexity. The jealousy, when one of them got attention from boys, the competitiveness, the fear of being left behind, and the way they could hurt each other in ways no one else could. The diary entries, a window into teenage anxiety. Throughout the book, Alderton includes excerpts from her teenage diaries, and these passages are both hilarious and heartbreaking. We see her younger self obsessing over boys who barely knew she existed, chronicling every minor social interaction as if it held cosmic significance and expressing the kind of raw, dramatic emotion that only teenagers can access. These diary entries serve multiple purposes. They provide comic relief with their melodrama and misplaced priorities. They show how little we understand ourselves when we're young, and they illustrate how the fundamental questions Alderton grappled with as a teenager. Am I good enough? Will anyone love me? Where do I fit in? Are questions she continues to explore in her 20s and beyond. Particularly poignant theme in the diaries is Alderton's early relationship with food and her body. Even as a young teenager, she was already internalizing messages about needing to be thinner, prettier, more desirable. These entries foreshadow struggles with disordered eating that would intensify in her 20s. University and expanding horizons. Alderton and Farley attend different universities, and this separation marks the first major test of their friendship. Alderton goes to university in London, where she throws herself into student life, drinking, dating, and trying to figure out who she is, apart from her family and her best friend. This section explores the peculiar freedom and terror of being 18 and suddenly responsible for yourself. Alderton describes the chaos of student houses, the bonding that happens over shared hangovers, and the way university friendships form quickly and intensely, because everyone is equally lost and equally eager to find their people. She also begins to write seriously during this time, working on student publications and discovering that she has a voice and something to say. Writing becomes both a career path and a way of processing her experiences, a tool for making sense of the world. Part 2. The Messy Reality of Your Twenties. Moving to London and the Golden Age of Friendship. After university, Alderton moves into a flat in Camden with Farley and another friend, India. She describes this period as the golden age of her life, living with her best friends, working at jobs that don't define her, spending every night going out, and feeling like the world is full of infinite possibility. This section celebrates the specific joy of living with your friends in your early 20s, when you're all broke, but it doesn't matter because you have each other. Alderton captures the beauty of this time. Coming home drunk and making toast at 3 in the morning, having deep conversations on the kitchen floor, borrowing each other's clothes, and feeling like you're part of something special. But she also shows how this period plants seeds of anxiety. Everyone is pretending to be more confident and successful than they feel. Everyone is comparing themselves to everyone else. And the question of what comes next, career, relationships, adulthood, looms over everything. The pursuit of romantic love and its disappointments. A significant portion of the book is devoted to Alderton's romantic relationships and dating experiences throughout her 20s. She approaches this subject with unflinching honesty and dark humor, cataloguing the many ways love and dating can be disappointing, confusing, and occasionally devastating. She writes about one-night stands that leave her feeling empty, relationships that never quite launch, men who pursue her intensely and then disappear, and the constant low-level anxiety of wondering if she'll ever find lasting love. She describes the peculiar pain of modern dating, the ambiguity, the game playing, the way technology allows people to maintain connection while avoiding real commitment. One of her most significant relationships is with a man she calls Jack, who becomes a recurring presence in her 20s. Their relationship is characterized by intensity, followed by distance, passion, followed by abandonment. He represents the kind of man many women waste years on, emotionally unavailable, occasionally cruel, but somehow impossible to completely let go of because the good moments are so intoxicating. Alderton doesn't shy away from examining her own complicity in these unfulfilling relationships. She acknowledges how she made herself smaller, accepted treatment she didn't deserve, and mistook drama for depth. She explores why she and her friends kept gravitating toward men who couldn't love them properly, suggesting it had something to do with not believing they deserved better. Career struggles and finding a voice. Parallel to her romantic struggles, Alderton chronicles her efforts to build a career as a writer and journalist. She describes the precariousness of freelance life in London, the constant financial stress, the imposter syndrome, and the difficulty of breaking into an industry that often feels closed to outsiders. She writes about failed pitches, rejected applications, and the grinding nature of trying to make it in a creative field while everyone around you seems to be succeeding. But she also describes the joy of seeing her name in print, the thrill of landing a good assignment, and the gradual realization that she's actually building something. This section is valuable for anyone pursuing creative work because Alderton doesn't sugarcoat the difficulty. She shows that success rarely comes quickly or easily, and that for every visible achievement, there are dozens of invisible failures and rejections. The Unravelling, Friendship Under Pressure. As Alderton and her friends move through their mid-20s, the golden age of friendship begins to fracture. People's lives start diverging. Some friends get serious boyfriends and girlfriends. Others move away for career opportunities. The easy assumption that they'll all stay close forever starts to feel naive. Most significantly, Alderton's relationship with Farley begins to change. Farley gets into a serious relationship, And suddenly, the friendship that was once the center of both their lives has to make room for romantic love. Alderton describes the specific pain of watching your best friend fall in love with someone else, the jealousy and abandonment that comes with no longer being the most important person in their life. This leads to one of the book's most powerful themes: the way platonic love is devalued in our culture compared to romantic love. Society tells us that it's natural and right to prioritize a romantic partner over friends, that growing up means putting friendships second. Alderton questions this hierarchy, arguing that the love between friends can be just as profound, complex, and life-defining as romantic love. The fracturing of this friendship coincides with some of Alderton's darkest moments. She develops disordered eating patterns, drinks too much, and feels increasingly lost and anxious. She describes what it's like to feel like everyone else is moving forward, getting engaged, buying houses, advancing in careers, while you feel stuck in adolescence. Part 3. Rock Bottom and Rebuilding. The breakdown. Alderton hits what she describes as rock bottom in her late 20s. Her relationship with Farley is strained. She's in an on-again, off-again situation with Jack that's making her miserable. Her eating disorder has worsened. She's drinking heavily and using sex and partying as ways to avoid dealing with her feelings. She describes a particularly low moment when she finds herself drunk and crying at a party, feeling completely disconnected from herself and her life. This moment becomes a turning point because it forces her to confront the fact that the way she's been living isn't sustainable and isn't making her happy. What's powerful about Alderton's description of this period is her refusal to romanticize suffering. She doesn't present her struggles as making her more interesting or deep. Instead, she shows how destructive behaviors compound, how easy it is to lose yourself, and how hard it is to ask for help. Getting help and getting sober. Alderton makes the decision to stop drinking, at least temporarily, and this decision changes everything. Without alcohol as a buffer, she has to face her feelings directly. She starts therapy and begins unpacking the anxiety, insecurity, and fear that have been driving her self-destructive patterns. She writes honestly about how difficult sobriety is, especially in London in your 20s, when your entire social life revolves around pubs and parties. She describes feeling boring, feeling left out, and having to rebuild her social life from scratch. But she also describes the clarity that comes with sobriety, the way it allows her to see her life and relationships more honestly. Therapy helps her understand patterns she's been repeating since adolescence. She begins to see how her relationship with her body, with food, and with men are all connected to deeper questions about self-worth and belonging. She starts to untangle the stories she's been telling herself about who she is and what she deserves. Rebuilding friendship. One of the most moving parts of the book is Alderton's description of rebuilding her relationship with Farley. They have difficult conversations about how they've hurt each other, about the expectations they've placed on their friendship, and about how to make space for both romantic relationships and platonic love in their lives. Alderton realizes that her possessiveness of Farley wasn't healthy, that her expectation that Farley would never prioritize anyone else was unfair. But she also realizes that Farley had sometimes taken her for granted, assuming the friendship would survive any amount of neglect because it had always been there. They find a new equilibrium, one that's more mature and less codependent, but no less loving. Alderton learns that friendship can evolve and change without ending, that growth sometimes means letting go of how things used to be while holding on to what matters most. Finding love in unexpected places. Alderton also starts to find healthier romantic relationships. She describes dating a man who treats her well, who communicates clearly, and who doesn't play games. At first, this feels boring compared to the drama of her previous relationships, and she has to retrain herself to recognize that stability isn't the same as lack of passion. More importantly, she starts to develop a better relationship with herself. She realizes that no romantic relationship can fix the fundamental questions of self-worth and identity. She has to do that work herself. This insight is hard-won and unglamorous, but it's transformative. Part 4. The Lists and Lessons. What I Know About Love. Throughout the book, Alderton includes lists that punctuate the narrative and provide different perspectives on the themes she's exploring. These lists are sometimes funny, sometimes heartbreaking, and always revealing. She includes lists like things I'd tell my younger self, bad dates, things that helped, and what I know about love. These lists serve as both comic relief and moments of crystallized wisdom. They break up the narrative and give readers bite-sized insights. In her concluding reflections, Alderton articulates what she's learned about love through all her experiences. She's learned that romantic love isn't more important than platonic love, that you can't build a relationship on potential, that loving yourself isn't selfish but necessary. She's learned that growing up doesn't mean becoming someone else, but becoming more fully yourself. She's learned that heartbreak doesn't kill you, that you're more resilient than you think, and that asking for help is strength, not weakness. She's learned that the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we deserve have enormous power, and that we can choose to change those stories. The importance of female friendship. If the book has one central argument, it's this. Female friendship is one of the most important, formative, and sustaining forces in many women's lives, and yet we don't talk about it or celebrate it nearly enough. We have countless movies, songs, and books about romantic love, but far fewer that explore platonic love with the same depth and seriousness. Alderton argues that the intensity of female friendship, particularly in adolescence and early adulthood, deserves to be taken seriously. These relationships shape us, save us, and sometimes break us. They're not just a prelude to romantic relationships or something we outgrow. They're central to our lives. She also explores the specific ways women support each other, the emotional labor of female friendship, and how women create spaces of intimacy and vulnerability with each other that they often can't create with men. She celebrates this while also being honest about the ways female friendship can be complicated by competition, jealousy, and societal pressure. Conclusion. Growing up without losing yourself. The book's ultimate message. Everything I Know About Love ultimately argues that growing up doesn't mean abandoning the parts of yourself that feel young and hopeful and messy. It doesn't mean prioritizing romantic love over friendship, ambition over joy, or stability over authenticity. It means learning to take care of yourself while staying open to connection. It means making space for both independence and intimacy. Alderton ends the book not with all the answers, but with a sense of hard-won peace. She's still figuring things out. She still makes mistakes. But she's learned to be kinder to herself, to ask for what she needs, and to recognize love in all its forms. She's learned that love isn't just romantic grand gestures, but also showing up for your friend when they need you, calling your mum when you're struggling, and choosing to treat yourself with compassion even when it's hard. Love is both bigger and smaller than she thought. It's everywhere, and it's daily practice. Why this book resonates. Everything I Know About Love became a phenomenon because it gives voice to experiences many women have, but rarely see reflected honestly in books. It doesn't present a sanitized version of your 20s, or pretend that growing up is a smooth, linear process. It shows the mess, the confusion, the setbacks, and the small victories. Alderton writes with humour and self-awareness, never letting herself off the hook for her mistakes, but also refusing to be cruel to her younger self. She understands that we're all doing our best with the tools we have, and that growing up is partly about developing better tools. The book also fills a gap in how we talk about female friendship. By centering her relationship with Farley and taking it as seriously as any romantic relationship, Alderton validates an experience that many women recognize but rarely see treated with this level of depth and complexity. Final thoughts. For readers, Everything I Know About Love offers both comfort and challenge. It's comforting to see your own experiences reflected, to know you're not alone in your struggles with love, friendship, self-worth, and figuring out who you are. It's challenging because Alderton doesn't offer easy answers or suggest that everything works out perfectly. What she does offer is honesty, humour, and hope. She shows that it's possible to survive heartbreak, to repair damaged friendships, to change destructive patterns, and to build a life that feels authentic to who you are. She shows that love, in all its forms, is worth the risk, the vulnerability, and the occasional devastation. The book's lasting value is in its reminder that your 20s are supposed to be messy, that friendship is as important as romance, that you're allowed to struggle, and that growing up is a process, not a destination. Most importantly, it argues that the love you have for your friends, your family, and yourself is just as valid and valuable as romantic love, maybe even more so. Everything I Know About Love is ultimately a celebration of female friendship, an honest portrait of growing up, and a reminder that we're all making it up as we go along. And sometimes, that's exactly what we need to hear.